Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Part 121 based on novel. So let's start. Yuhao? Can I call you that? Shu Jiujiu asked Hui Yuhao with a smile from where she was sitting in the main seat. Hui Yuhao nodded and replied, "Of course you can, Your Highness." "How's the situation at the front right now?" Shu Jiujiu sighed softly and said, "The situation is not good. The Sun Moon Empire's defensive strength is unknown to us. They were too sudden with their attack, and paved the way using Class 9 stationary soul cannon shells. They managed to blow up the Mingdo mountain range and create a path. Then, we thought that they were going all out to attack the Star Luo Empire and quickly pulled all our resources here to resist their onslaught. We even called for reinforcements. But who knew that they had no intention of attacking after some time? It was only then that we realized that things had gone south. When we tried to probe by attacking, the Sun Moon Empire only mounted a defense at the Mingdo mountain range. Their real target has now been verified. They are going for the Heavenly Soul Empire. We tried to make a breakthrough from this side and help the Heavenly Soul Empire with the burden by targeting the interior of the Sun Moon Empire. However, their defense is simply too strong. We suffered huge losses and weren't able to make any advances." When she finished speaking, Shu Jiujiu couldn't help but close her eyes in pain. The image of the light of the death god flashing was still etched in her mind. She and many of the soul masters from the Star Luo Empire were still traumatized by the terrifying strike they had witnessed. Hui Yuhao asked, "What about the Heavenly Soul Empire? How are they now?" Shu Jiujiu shook her head and said, "I can only confirm that the Sun Moon Empire is attacking them now. We have already sent reinforcements from the Douling Empire over. Furthermore, we've also deployed 2 Soul Engineer Legions to alleviate the pressure they are facing. We are better able to cope with the burden if both empires are at the front lines resisting the enemy." Hui Yuhao was shocked, and asked, "Hasn't there been any accurate information?" It had been a few days since he had left the army and returned to Shrek Academy. However, the Star Luo Empire had yet to receive accurate information from the Heavenly Soul Empire. Not only did this have to do with their backward communication soul tools, it also had something to do with the intense war that was going on at the Heavenly Soul Empire. It was easy to imagine the Heavenly Soul Empire being under a ferocious onslaught by the Sun Moon Empire. Shu Jiujiu furrowed her brow and said, "We've already sent out 10 people, but we've yet to get any information. We even sent a titled Doluor, and I believe we'll find out some news soon." "The White Tiger Duke is here," a guard outside shouted. Everyone subconsciously stood up. The curtains to the tent were opened, and the White Tiger Duke walked in. There were 2 others with him. Dai Yuehang and Dai Luoli. The White Tiger's white armor had the same black tiger patterns as his martial soul. It wasn't clear what material his armor was made of. Hui Yuhao judged it should be made of some special alloy, as soul power seemed to circulate through it. Was it a suit of close combat armor? In terms of rank, it should be a Class 7 soul tool. Although this armor made the White Tiger Duke appear very suave, Hui Yuhao felt pity for him. As a marshal of the Star Luo Empire, he could only don a Class 7 soul tool. It showed how far behind the Star Luo Empire was in terms of soul tools. Hui Yuhao was sizing up the White Tiger Duke right now, and the White Tiger Duke was naturally sizing him up too. This guy must be leading the team from Shrek Academy, given that he's sitting beside Princess Jiujiu. When Princess Jiujiu sent someone to call the White Tiger Duke, he was only informed that representatives from Shrek Academy had arrived. However, he wasn't informed who they were. Right now, he was disappointed when he saw that they were all youngsters, even though he didn't express it openly. If they were the strong ones from Shrek Academy, the situation might still be able to be reversed. However, what can these youngsters do? "Yuhao, so it's you," Dai Yuehang said delightfully. However, he immediately shut his mouth after he finished speaking. He was in a camp, and even in front of his father. The White Tiger Duke turned his head to look at Dai Yuehang. However, he didn't reprimand him. Instead, he returned his attention to Hui Yuhao. Even though Hu Yuhao tried his best to calm himself down, he couldn't completely maintain his composure. This person was his father, and the person he had once hated. However, after a few interactions, he didn't exact his revenge. Instead, he even saved him twice. He had once met the White Tiger Duke during the Elite Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy tournament. It was just that he was still too weak then, and wasn't noticed by the White Tiger Duke yet. It was his first time meeting Dai Hao directly and face to face. What no one noticed was that Dai Lawley's mouth was slightly open right now, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. He was flabbergasted as he looked at Hu Yuhao. Dai Lawley immediately recognized Hu Yuhao. How could he not? In addition, he was much more astonished compared to Dai Yuehang. He was much more astonished. Elder brother, what games are you playing? Shrek Academy, so you're actually from Shrek Academy? After Hu Yuhao left without bidding goodbye that day, Dai Lawley returned to the camp and was anxious when Hu Yuhao didn't return. After that, he was reassigned to be by the White Tiger Duke's side. In the past, Dai Hao wouldn't have done that, because he thought that Dai Lawley was better off living a simpler life free of risks if he wasn't fit enough to inherit the title of the White Tiger Duke. However, the appearance of Dai Lawley's mysterious master caused the mutation and awakening of his martial soul. His cultivation increased by leaps and bounds as a result. Although he was already a bit old, Dai Lawley still had potential. The White Tiger Duke had to be unselfish and nurture his own outstanding son. He arranged for Dai Lawley to be brought to his side and let him learn from Dai Yuehang temporarily. As he cultivated, he could learn military skills. He was also given permission to attend some military meetings, which was regarded as training. At this point, Hu Yuhao's attention was all on the White Tiger Duke, and he didn't focus on his younger brother. He took the initiative to greet the White Tiger Duke along with Xu Jiujiu. Xu Jiujiu smiled and said, "Uncle Dai, let me introduce you. This is the #1 talent from the younger generation of Shrek Academy, the one who established the Spirit Pagoda, and the youngest member of the Sea Gods Pavilion, Hu Yuhao. I believe you've heard of his name before." Her introduction was very detailed, and Dai Hao was immediately shocked. He had naturally heard Hu Yuhao's name many times before. When the Spirit Pagoda was first established and spirits first appeared, he had once asked Dai Yuehang whether he knew Hu Yuhao. Dai Yuehang recounted his experiences with Hu Yuhao. To Dai Yuehang, Hu Yuhao was a legend. He had become a member of the Sea Gods Pavilion before he was even 20. What did the Sea Gods Pavilion represent? It was the highest level of Shrek Academy. At this moment, he no longer underestimated Hu Yuhao because of his age. In the continent, who would dare to underestimate a member of the Sea Gods Pavilion? Moreover, he was also the founder of the Spirit Pagoda. It's rumored that he discovered spirits. This young man can no longer be described with the word genius. He's more like a freak. Shrek Academy didn't send anyone strong, but his arrival definitely signifies how importantly Shrek Academy regards this war. Dai Yuehang had once told the White Tiger Duke that Hu Yuhao was possibly the future heir to the master of the Sea Gods Pavilion. In an empire, his current position was like a crown prince. Hu Yuhao was no longer the rookie he was before. He concealed his emotions very well, and wore a smile as he said, "Greetings to you, Duke." Her Highness was too kind with her words. I didn't establish the Spirit Pagoda. It was jointly founded by the Academy and the Three Empires, as well as the savage beasts of the Great Star Do Forest. Xu Jiujiu smiled and said, "Don't stand on ceremony anymore. Without the spirits that you researched, how could we have established the Spirit Pagoda? I heard that the Spirit Pagoda is like a holy ground to soul masters now. Its future potential is unlimited. It's a pity, if this war hadn't appeared, I would have followed all of you to the headquarters of the Spirit Pagoda." Xu Jiujiu's words deepened the White Tiger Duke's impression of Hu Yuhao. He nodded at Hu Yuhao and said, "You are indeed a hero. I've heard Dai Yuehang mention you before. Welcome to the Northwestern Field Army." As he spoke, he extended his right hand towards Hu Yuhao. Hu Yuhao raised his hand to shake it. The White Tiger Duke's palm was broad, warm, and filled with strength. When their hands came into contact with one another, Hu Yuhao was almost distracted. When he started to recall everything, he always asked his mother where his father was. He yearned for his father's care, and wished that his father was there to protect him and his mother. However, he had never received the love of his father before. This was his first time coming into such close contact with the White Tiger Duke in a place other than a battlefield. He suddenly turned aggressive and almost blurted out to the White Tiger Duke, "Where were you when I was young?" However, he was Hu Yuhao. His immense spiritual power restrained his urges. He just appeared a bit emotional from the look in his eyes. The White Tiger Duke felt a little weird, too. Hu Yuhao's hand was very cold. This wasn't supposed to happen to a strong soul master. Soul masters should be able to regulate their own temperature very well. Furthermore, Hu Yuhao's eyes seemed to be filled with some kind of special emotion. He felt as if he had met Hu Yuhao before. For a moment, he appeared to sense some kind of ill intent from that emotion. However, he subconsciously felt that Hu Yuhao could be fully trusted. As for where this feeling came from, he could only attribute it to his sixth sense. After this momentary handshake, they both immediately regained their composures. The White Tiger Duke gestured to Hu Yuhao. "You are our guest. Please, take a seat." Xu Jiujiu took the initiative to offer her seat to Dai Hao. This was a show of respect to the White Tiger Duke, and also a show of apology for her earlier misjudgment. Naturally, a guard promptly added another seat beside the White Tiger Duke's. Hu Yuhao was to the White Tiger Duke's left, while Xu Jiujiu was to his right. Dai Yuehang and Dai Luoli didn't have any seats. The White Tiger Duke's house rules were very strict. In the military, he was even stricter towards his own sons. Dai Luoli was standing closer to Hu Yuhao, and never stopped looking at him. Hu Yuhao had already calmed down, and it was only now that he remembered to greet his own younger brother. Their spiritual powers connected, and he asked Dai Luoli to calm down. After this period of training, Dai Luoli's cultivation and mentality had developed significantly, but it was only now that he suppressed his own curiosity and calmed himself. Dai Hao turned his head at Hu Yuhao and said, "It's been tough on all of you. What advice does Shrek Academy have?" Xu Jiujiu rushed to pass the letter over to Dai Hao. Hu Yuhao said, "This is the letter that Elder Xian wrote to you. We are only here to be under your command and fight against the enemies of the Empire. According to Elder Xian, our main responsibilities are to be scouts." Dai Hao nodded. He opened the letter and read it carefully. Elder Xian didn't write too much down. First, he expressed Shrek Academy's support for the Star Luo Empire. After this, he explained that Hu Yuhao and the others came from the Tang sect, and they were all talents that came from Shrek Academy. He hoped that they could help the Star Luo Empire resist the Sun Moon Empire at the front lines. Among all of them, he specifically mentioned how good Hu Yuhao was in terms of surveillance skills. He also honestly told the White Tiger Duke that Hu Yuhao was the only one who managed to complete the ultimate soldier plan in Shrek Academy. Dai Yuehang would have already told Dai Hao about this. There was nothing he had to hide. After seeing this letter, Dai Hao couldn't help but turn his attention towards Hu Yuhao again. Even if Xu Jiujiu's praise sounded rather unbelievable, it was hardly unlikely that Elder Xian would exaggerate his words. From his words, Elder Xian's recommendation of Hu Yuhao was even better than Xu Jiujiu's. The White Tiger Duke had no choice but to take note of him now. "All of you came on time. Let's not delay any further." Talking about reconnaissance, the White Tiger Duke laughed bitterly as he shook his head. "The reason why we've been led on a wild goose chase by the Sun Moon Empire is because our reconnaissance efforts have been completely sealed. We are completely unaware of the situation at the Mingdo mountain range. The aerial surveillance soul tools of the Sun Moon Empire have completely blocked off all our surveillance. They have even broken the connection that we have with our friendly troops at the front." After hearing the White Tiger Duke's words, Hu Yuhao was also shocked. He could imagine that they couldn't receive any useful information, but he didn't expect them to lose contact with their own friendly forces. This was a little unbelievable. It seemed like he had underestimated the Sun Moon Empire's strength in terms of aerial surveillance soul tools. The White Tiger Duke said, "There are a few active tactical units from the Sun Moon Empire along the borders, formed by high-tier soul engineers. Although I don't know how they managed to do so, I'm certain that all the information gathered from their aerial surveillance SOL tools is transmitted to them immediately. They rely on these aerial surveillance SOL tools to locate our scouts before killing them. We've become blind because of this. The situation now is very awkward. We aren't able to carry out a direct assault. The Sun Moon Empire has installed an extremely strong SOL tool at the Mingdo mountain range. It's too destructive. I'm afraid that we'll be unable to attack them at all. In terms of surveillance, we're also very far behind. It seems like we are monitoring them, but we actually have no idea what they are doing. We are at a very disadvantageous situation in this war. From our judgment, the Sun Moon Empire is likely to be aiming at the Heavenly Soul Empire. It's been a few days, but we've yet to receive any accurate news from the Heavenly Soul Empire. I just know that our guess is right. Now that we've no information, we are completely at a disadvantage in this war. After listening to the White Tiger Duke's words, all the Soul Masters from the Star Luo Empire and Princess Jojo looked very grim. Earlier, when Shu Jojo was recounting everything to Huo Yuhao, she still withheld some information. However, the White Tiger Duke did not withhold anything. After he finished speaking, the White Tiger Duke was silent for a moment before he said, "This is the current situation. Regretting our decision to neglect SOL tools is meaningless now. We can only do our best to deal with this war as it is. Elder Shen recommends your surveillance skills highly. What I would like to know is how good you are in this area." He was very straightforward, just like a military leader should be. After pondering for a moment, he said, "We are unable to guarantee how good we are. We still need to understand the situation on the Sun Moon Empire's side. I need to monitor things first before I can decide on anything. Although the Sun Moon Empire controls the sky, their control is not absolute. Their high-altitude surveillance SOL tools can only cover up to 5,000 meters." The Big Dipper Doluo creased his brow and said, "My friend, 5,000 meters is already the highest humans can reach. Even for Ultimate Doluo, they wouldn't be confident of flying at a height of 5,000 meters for an extended period of time. It's even more impossible for us." The Big Dipper Doluo wasn't very pleased with the way Huo Yuhao described things. He felt that Huo Yuhao was being very boastful with his words. Huo Yuhao nodded very seriously and said, "You're right. Generally speaking, titled Doluo can only fly up to 5,000 meters. In addition, they can only stay at this height for a short time, as it will place too much of a burden on their bodies. However, 5,000 meters is also the limit for the Sun Moon Empire's SOL tools. At that height, there are only 1 or 2 SOL tools that they can use. However, these SOL tools can't see everything. If a titled Doluo can send me to a height of 5,000 meters, I'll be able to glide my way near the Mingdo mountain range." The Big Dipper Doluo was moved, and asked, "Do you mean that you can avoid the surveillance SOL tools 5,000 meters in the air?" Huo Yuhao was impressed. No wonder he's the leader of the #1 Soul Master Legion in the Star Luo Empire. He managed to catch the gist of what I'm saying immediately. He nodded and replied, "Yes, I'm confident. More accurately speaking, I'm confident above 2,000 meters. Higher than 3,000 meters, I'm even more confident. Between 2 and 5,000 meters is where I'm trying to glide. Although I'm unable to fly 5,000 meters in the air, I'm still able to protect myself." The temperature of the air fell quickly the further one went from the ground. In addition, the temperature dropped extremely quickly after a height of 1,000 meters. At a height of 5,000 meters, the temperature of the air would reach -150 degrees Celsius. Even titled Doluo wouldn't be able to survive at such a temperature. If titled Doluo couldn't control themselves during their descent, they were in danger of falling to their deaths. However, Huo Yuhao wasn't affected by such low temperatures. The thin air was the most lethal. At that height, humans couldn't breathe, and thus he couldn't stay there for too long. The Big Dipper Doluo revealed a thoughtful look. The White Tiger Duke looked at Huo Yuhao and asked, "Wouldn't that be dangerous?" At that height, even the White Tiger Duke had never flown to that height before. It was simply too dangerous. If he faced any wind current and was blown to a higher altitude, he would face the extremely low temperatures, and might fall to his death if his soul power was overly drained. Huo Yuhao smiled and said, "The low temperature isn't a problem for me. My martial soul is ice type, so I'm stronger in terms of resisting the cold. I also have a way of dealing with the thin air. As long as it's not for too long, I'll be fine." The White Tiger Duke pressed, "However, even if you successfully sneak into the back end of the enemy's territories, how will you be able to return?" He didn't mention the internal part of the enemy's territories, because there were bound to be many surveillance Sol tools at the Mingdo mountain range. No matter how great Hui Yuhao's concealment abilities were, he was bound to be discovered if he descended directly into the Mingdo mountain range. That would be seeking his own death. It was why he could only fly directly across. Hui Yuhao said, "I believe in my own survival abilities. Returning should be easier." He couldn't hide from thermal detectors if he only used imitation. However, things were different if he used his spiritual interference domain. Furthermore, he could also control his body temperature using ultimate ice. Only some soul tools that relied on sound waves might be able to grasp his location, but that wouldn't be specific either. It also meant that Hui Yuhao had to deal with the attacks his enemies would unleash on him after he was discovered if he snuck around within the Mingdo mountain range and tried to return. However, these attacks couldn't be aimed properly, they were only domain-type attacks. Under such circumstances, it would depend on how well he could dodge, and how fast he could escape. There was some element of danger. However, to the rest, he was the only one who could survive under such circumstances. "Wait a minute, you forgot an important problem," a crisp voice spoke up. When Hui Yuhao turned his head and realized that the person speaking was Tang Wu. Tang Wu creased her brow slightly and looked at Hui Yuhao seriously. She said, "You can indeed rise to an altitude of 5,000 meters with the help of a title d'Or. However, have you ever considered the height of the Mingdo mountain range? Although I don't know the detailed statistics, I can estimate that the highest peaks of the Mingdo mountain range are at least 2,000 meters. If soul tools are installed above these mountain peaks, you won't be able to successfully hide from them unless you're able to maintain an altitude of 5,000 meters. The White Tiger Duke, Princess Jiujiu, and the rest of the Star Luo Empire's soul masters concurred with her words. Given how the Sun Moon Empire placed so much attention on blocking information from the Star Luo Empire, they couldn't possibly fail to place any soul tools on the mountain peaks. In addition, the area covered by these surveillance soul tools was bound to be greater than most normal surveillance soul tools. Hui Yuhao only smiled and replied, "Of course I've considered this problem. First, most aerial surveillance soul tools can only reach an altitude of 1,000 meters. Furthermore, most of them will be aimed towards the ground. Even if there are ground-based ones pointed towards the sky, they wouldn't be able to cover an altitude greater than 1,000 meters because of the wind currents and all types of volatile elements. The aerial surveillance soul tools installed on these mountain peaks are bound to be affected by these conditions, too. It is the same reason such ordinary soul tools can't be successfully installed 2,000 meters in the air. The surveillance soul tools that they have installed at these mountain peaks must be ground-based ones facing the sky. The Sun Moon Empire has high-altitude surveillance soul tools. Such soul tools can carry out surveillance at an altitude of 3,000 meters. However, they can only face the ground. At the same time, such surveillance soul tools are still incomplete and are not precise. There's no way they can detect my concealed self. The only threat to me is the ground-based surveillance soul tools facing the sky. So, let's look at the situation of these surveillance soul tools. Right now, we know that the Sun Moon Empire's ground-based surveillance soul tools are the most effective. They are able to scan up to an altitude of 1,500 meters and detect what's in the air. Thermal, airflow and oscillation detectors can only reach up to 500 meters. After 500 meters, their effectiveness will drop significantly. They won't be able to reach beyond 1,000 meters. These numbers have been meticulously calculated. This means that I won't be discovered if I'm at least 3,000 meters above the Mingdo mountain range. This is even under the condition that I'm directly above the highest mountain peak of the Mingdo mountain range, when in fact, I'll intentionally find a lower mountain peak to perform my surveillance. After Hui Yuhao mentioned this series of numbers, all the soul masters from the Star Luo Empire couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Their combined knowledge of the Sun Moon Empire's surveillance soul tools couldn't compare to Hui Yuhao's. Hui Yuhao continued, "This is why I'll be fine as long as I don't glide below an altitude of 3,000 meters after I'm sent 5,000 meters into the air. Following that, I can start performing my surveillance." He squinted as he spoke until here, and a layer of dim golden light shone from his eyes. Following this, he unleashed a spiritual web that engulfed the entire tent. All the soul masters from the Star Luo Empire were shocked. However, they soon realized that this was Hui Yuhao's spiritual power. They wanted to resist it subconsciously, but they let it go after they saw the White Tiger Duke signal. Hui Yuhao's spiritual power soon linked up with everyone in the tent. After this, his spiritual intent was revealed and quickly spread across the entire tent. All his surveillance results were shared with everyone present through his spiritual sharing. Instantly, a detailed stereoscopic image of everything within a 5-kilometer radius from Hui Yuhao filled the minds of everyone. The White Tiger Duke was stunned. Princess Jojo and the Big Dipper Doluo were also shocked. All the soul masters from the Star Luo Empire were instantly rooted to the ground in amazement. So was Tang Wu. His spiritual power was immense. He was just sitting there, but he could actually use such a method to share everything in his head. He was much more magical than the Sun Moon Empire's surveillance soul tools. Everyone was in awe. Hui Yuhao said, "In terms of unidirectional detection, I'm confident of reaching a distance of 5 kilometers. This is why I'll be able to see what's happening in the Mingdo mountain range from an altitude of 3,000 meters, and I'm sure I'll be accurate. However, I won't be able to obtain much information if I'm just surveilling it once. This is because I need to ensure that I'm always in my best condition, in terms of soul and spiritual power. I always restrict myself to only 15 minutes of surveillance every time. I'm able to keep myself 3,000 meters in the air for roughly 15 minutes. After my surveillance, I can also try my best to return without catching the attention of the enemy's soul tools. If I am successful, I'll go back a few more times, and I'll be able to recall everything." The look in the White Tiger Duke's eyes returned to normal. He suddenly felt that Hui Yuhao's spiritual detection sharing was very familiar. Does this person have something to do with the person who saved me before? Dai Hao didn't think that Hui Yuhao was that person. That was because that person was one of the strongest people on the continent right now. The second time that person saved him, the strength that he had demonstrated was simply too great. The Big Dipper Doluo was a little agitated as he stood up. He punched his right fist against his left palm. "Great! Young man, I'm sorry for doubting you earlier. Your arrival has brought hope for us. If you can study the enemy's formations, we'll be in a much better situation. We'll at least be able to find out their flaws. I understand that you want to glide from an altitude of 5,000 meters because you want to conserve your soul power, am I right?" Hui Yuhao nodded. Even given his current cultivation, he couldn't last more than an hour at an altitude of 3,000 meters. In this 1 hour, he would use only a quarter of the time to carry out surveillance. He also still had to ensure that he was in a state to fight the enemy at any time. He didn't reveal something. If he was detected by a powerful soul master, soul engineer, or a soul tool specifically designed to detect soul power or faced any abnormalities, he was bound to come across danger. He didn't reveal this because he didn't want his partners to be too worried. "It's too dangerous by yourself. Let me follow you," Yi Gai immediately said. Hui Yuhao was a little stunned as he looked at her. In his heart, he had hoped that Tang Wu would be the one who said this. Yi Gai's eyes met his, and she turned a bit red. "With someone helping you, at least you'll be more successful in escaping." Hui Yuhao shook his head and said, "No, this isn't a fight. With an additional person, I'll need to take care of my partner when I conceal myself. It's better for me to escape alone. I'll go myself. It's much more effective." Yi Gai looked a little disappointed, but she didn't persist. She only nodded before sitting back down again. Princess Jojo was a little agitated. "Yuhao, if you succeed, you'll contribute the most to the entire Star Luo Empire. Tell me whatever you want. As long as I can do it, I'll do my best to satisfy you." Everyone from the Tang sect revealed a slight smile on their faces. They didn't think that Hui Yuhao would make any demands, given that he was the founder of the Spirit Pagoda and a member of the Sea Gods Pavilion. However, something surprising happened. Hui Yuhao nodded gently and said, "If possible, I hope that I'll be able to earn merits just like a Star Luo Empire soldier after this reconnaissance mission, and attain a military ranking, as well as become knighted." "What?" Everyone from the Tang sect was shocked when he said this. Only Tang Wu was not as surprised. After all, she didn't know Hui Yuhao that well. How is this possible? Including Xu Jiujiu, many of them who were present thought this way. He was a member of the Sea God's Pavilion, his status was unrivaled. He possessed great influence in the world of Soul Masters. If he obtained a knighthood and earned merits as a soldier, wouldn't he be bound to the Star Luo Empire? The Star Luo Empire would be taking advantage of him then. Why would Hui Yuhao do something like this? Xu Jiujiu looked very surprised, but she was also very intelligent. She immediately nodded without any hesitation and said, "No problem. Given your abilities and cultivation, I can promise you the position of a Viscount right now on behalf of my elder brother. Your position will also be inherited by your future descendants." A Viscount was the second least prestigious position in the nobility, but it was still considered very prestigious, especially since his descendants could inherit his position. Their lives would be worry-free. Furthermore, this was because Xu Jiujiu was a princess. If the Star Luo Empire's emperor was here, he might promise him even more. By deepening their ties with Hui Yuhao, the empire was building its relationship with the Spirit Pagoda. At the same time, the empire was also building its relationship with Shrek Academy. This was highly advantageous for the empire. Xu Sanqi's expression was very serious, and he said, "Yuhao, you must consider this very carefully. You aren't just representing yourself right now." Hui Yuhao nodded gently, a little excited. This was what he had hoped for many years. After taking in a deep breath, Hui Yuhao looked at Princess Jiujiu seriously and said, "Your Highness, I still want to add a few prerequisites. Everything I mentioned earlier only applies to me. Furthermore, I don't need you to promise me a knighthood right now. I'm willing to follow the rules of the Star Luo Empire and earn my position and status through my own merits. I won't be an exception. However, I'm only representing myself. At this moment, I'm only Hui Yuhao. I've nothing to do with the Spirit Pagoda, Shrek Academy, or the Tang sect. At the same time, even if I become a knight in the Star Luo Empire, I won't be controlled by the Empire. Similarly, I won't be under the command of the Empire. If you think this is acceptable, I'll accept this contribution and offer. Otherwise, I'd rather not take it." Everyone was confused by Hui Yuhao's words. What does he mean? He wants to earn merits and his knighthood, but he's not willing to perform any services. Or rather, he would only perform services according to his own wishes. However, what's the significance of these things to him anyway, then? Xu Jiujiu creased her brow slightly and asked, "Yuhao, can I ask what is this for? Although I'm a princess in the Star Luo Empire and I really hope that you would join the Empire, I'm also clear on your standing in the world of Soul Masters. There's no need for you to do this. If you want glory, money, or wealth, it's very easy. Why did you choose the Star Luo Empire?" Hui Yuhao calmly replied, "I have my own reasons. First, I'm from the Star Luo Empire." When he said this, the look on all the Soul Masters' faces became much gentler. This Hui Yuhao is also part of the Star Luo Empire. I guess he just wants to contribute to his country. In addition, everyone felt closer to him upon learning that he was from the Star Luo Empire. Xu Jiujiu already knew that Hui Yuhao was from the Star Luo Empire. When she met Hui Yuhao during the first Elite Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy tournament, she had checked on his background, where he had filled in his country of origin as the Star Luo Empire. Of course, it was different back than when he was saying it right now. This time it meant that he recognized the Star Luo Empire. Hui Yuhao continued, "When I was young, I had a dream of becoming a general. This is my wish. I hope that I'll be able to become a general and a marshal through my own hard work. Right now, I'm willing to use my own abilities to slowly realize this wish. I hope that I'll be able to lead my own army like the White Tiger Duke, and make my name prominent." This reason seemed convincing enough, at least to ordinary people. However, when he said this, everyone from the Tang sect felt that it was very weird. Wasn't Hui Yuhao already very prominent? In addition, could the position of a general or marshal really be compared to a truly powerful soul master? No matter how capable the White Tiger Duke was in terms of leading his own army, his reputation couldn't compare to the master of the Sea God's Pavilion, much less an ultimate Dolor. Those in the Tang sect who were very familiar with Hui Yuhao knew that he was bound to become an ultimate Dolor in the future. However, he requested the right to earn military merits and be knighted by the Star Luo Empire. Suddenly, everyone was confused. There was an intent look on his face as he glanced at the White Tiger Duke. Yes, he could only use this method to fulfill his dream now. Among those present, the only person who could really understand Hui Yuhao's intentions was probably his younger brother, Dai Luoli. When Hui Yuhao said all this, the look in Dai Luoli's eyes became complex. Elder brother, what do you want? Do you really want to compete with Dad? What kind of ending are you hoping for? His acceptance and recognition of Hui Yuhao had already surpassed his feelings toward Dai Yuehang and Dai Huabin in just one short month of interaction. Even though Hui Yuhao had used hellish methods to nurture him, he could sense Hui Yuhao's concern and sincerity in his relentless instruction. His life had completely changed after 1 month, and so he completely trusted Hui Yuhao. On one side, there was his biological father. On the other side was his elder brother, who he trusted a lot. Suddenly, he was very confused. On whose side should he stand? Dai Luoli also wasn't clear what Hui Yuhao wanted in the end, or to what extent he would go to. Princess Jiujiu took a deep look at Hui Yuhao, then nodded gently before saying, "All right, I agree to your demands. You can follow the Star Luo Empire's rules to earn your position. However, we won't restrain you. As long as you're willing, you can do whatever you want. I only have one demand, or rather, one request. When there's a national crisis, I hope you'll offer your help. Be a hero and protect your country." Hui Yuhao nodded slightly when he saw the passionate look in Xu Jiujiu's eyes and answered, "I won't claim to be a hero, but I'll stand up for my country if there's a crisis. I'll do it. I'll prove it with my actions." The White Tiger Duke was watching closely Hui Yuhao and said, "That's a deal, then. When you complete this reconnaissance mission, the princess and I will celebrate for you. I'll personally pen down your contributions, and I hope that we'll watch the rise of a heroic general in the future. The Star Luo Empire needs a talent like you." He was really happy. If Hui Yuhao was just being patronizing, he wouldn't be able to convince the White Tiger Duke. However, Hui Yuhao's immense spiritual power had already fully convinced the White Tiger Duke. He felt that there really was hope when he saw Hui Yuhao. As he spoke, the White Tiger Duke lifted the cup in front of him. "We can't drink in the face of a national crisis, so I'll use tea to replace alcohol. Let me toast you. I hope that you'll be successful." Hui Yuhao also lifted his cup and toasted the White Tiger Duke. He calmly said, "Thanks." The White Tiger Duke smiled slightly after taking a sip of his tea. "Kid, I wonder where you hail from since you're from the Star Luo Empire." Hui Yuhao paused for a moment before saying, "I come from a village near the Star Luo city. It isn't very notable." The White Tiger Duke smiled and said, "It's really rare for a small village to nurture a talent like you." Hui Yuhao clenched his fist and immediately repressed his urges. He calmly replied, "Duke, Your Highness, we've rushed throughout our entire journey. Let's end the day here, shall we? Let me ready myself before I start my mission within these 2 days. What do you think?" "All right, great." The White Tiger Duke was a firm believer of actions are louder than words. Seeing that Hui Yuhao wasn't wishy-washy, he was even more impressed by him. He patted his shoulder tightly, and instructed Dai Yuehang to find Hui Yuhao and the others a place to rest. As they were from Shrek Academy, the tents that were arranged for them were very good. Every one of them was given a tent that was normally given to the commanding officer of a Soul Engineer Legion. Every tent was close to 50 square meters in size, and furnished with a table and a bed. There were even a few simple decorations. This was the best treatment they could possibly get in wartime. Everyone from the Tang sect didn't rush to rest immediately. Instead, they congregated in Hui Yuhao's tent. "Little Junior, what were you doing today?" Xu Sanxia couldn't help but ask when he entered Hui Yuhao's tent. Hui Yuhao was being very abnormal when he asked for merits and a position in the Star Luo Empire. Hui Yuhao forced a smile and replied, "Third Senior, this really is my hope for the future. I don't have any other intentions. Please understand. Furthermore, I won't affect the Academy or the Tang sect due to my relationship with the Star Luo Empire." Seeing the complex look in Hui Yuhao's eyes, Xu Sanxia stopped his interrogation. He clasped Hui Yuhao's shoulder before saying, "Yuhao, we won't force you if you're not willing to say anything. We trust you. However, you can find someone to talk to if you're feeling sad. You'll feel better now. No matter who you choose, we'll keep things a secret. Okay, thanks, third senior. I'm fine. Apart from Tang Wu, who wasn't very familiar with Hui Hao, the rest naturally trusted him. Although everyone was surprised by his actions today, they didn't doubt him. The others didn't even ask him anything at all. Everyone returned to their own tents to rest. Hui Hao sat behind his table and looked a little dazed. Have I finally taken this step? Can I finally earn my own merits through my hard work? According to Xu Jiujiu's promise, he would be able to earn merits faster than he had planned. After this mission was over, he should be able to earn his knighthood, even if it was just an ordinary one. Dai Hao, you know I'm doing this just to surpass you. I want to become a hero of the Star Luo Empire, a hero that's more outstanding than you. When that day comes, I'll return to the Duke's mansion with my chest held high. I'll get back what my mother deserves. As he considered that, he clenched his fists, and the thoughts in his head cleared. His immense spiritual power surged in his spiritual sea, and his soul power also circulated throughout his entire body. Suddenly, the mysterious aura that he had once sensed in the spirit pagoda seemed to have subtly appeared again. Hui Hao was shocked, and quickly jolted himself out of that state. A smile slowly formed at the edges of his lips. Di Qian, even you can't continuously monitor me through your reverse scale. If I'm not wrong, I can obtain the aura of that world a second and third time, since I was able to do it the first time. But it won't be now. I won't let you sense anything anymore. After sitting for a short while, Hui Hao stood up and walked out of his tent. It was already the middle of the night. Although he was fatigued from rushing the whole day, he wasn't overly drained, given that he held an immense power of life inside. But he looked a little dazed as he walked towards a tent beside his. Tang Wu was in that tent. Dai Yuehang didn't know that she was Tang Wu instead of Wang Donga. In his heart, he thought that Wang Donga and Hui Hao were a couple. When he arranged the tents, he naturally arranged for the both of them to be together. Donga, you asleep, Hui Hao silently thought to himself. After he was distracted by the White Tiger Duke earlier, and after Xu Sanxia talked to him, he really wanted someone to confide in right now. Naturally, the person that he looked to was the person he loved the most. He slowly walked towards Tang Wu tent. When he reached her tent, he stopped for a moment and hesitated. After this, he gently slapped the curtains of the tent. The curtains were made of cloth, and thus not much sound was made. However, it was enough for soul masters, who had good hearing. Tang Wu voice sounded. Who is it? Wu, you asleep? Hui Hao asked softly. Tang Wu was silent for a moment, then said, It's already so late. What are you doing here? Hui Hao replied, I have something to discuss with you regarding our reconnaissance mission tomorrow night. If it's not convenient, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Tang Wu answered without any hesitation, then let's leave it for tomorrow. I don't want to know your secret, and I'm not interested in being your confidant. Hui Hao was slightly stunned, and found it a little amusing. It turned out that she believed Hui Hao had listened to Xu Sanxi's words and was treating her as his confidant. He was a little helpless as he shook his head and said, Rest, then. Good night. After he finished speaking, he walked towards his own tent. There was a lost look on his face. How good would it be if she were still Donga? At least I could still get some comfort while being in her soft and warm embrace. My Donga, when will you return? As he thought until here, Hui Hao was a little confused. Why can I sense Chioa, apart from just Donga, in Tang Wu body? Just as he walked towards his own tent, he heard something. Hui Hao subconsciously turned around and saw Tang Wu, who had already switched into a long white dress, standing in front of her tent. The moon was very beautiful tonight. The bright moonlight made her appear very quiet and calm as it fell on her, whereas her pinkish blue hair and eyes were the most beautiful ornaments in this bright night. Tang Wu looked at Hui Hao calmly and said, On account of your baked bun, I'll let you speak. However, I'm only letting you speak until one incense stick finishes burning. Even though Hui Hao knew that she had misunderstood him and thought that he wanted to confide in her, he still immediately walked over in front of her. He would never give up on any opportunity to get closer to Tang Wu. Hey, don't get so close. Seeing that Hui Hao was almost a meter in front of her, Tang Wu quickly raised her hand and warned him from getting any closer. Hui Hao stopped and watched the wary look in Tang Wu's eyes. He was a little dazed, and subconsciously said, Donga, you're beautiful. Tang Wu was stunned for a moment. After this, she furrowed her brow, glared and shouted furiously, "Who is your donor?" HMPH. After she finished speaking, she turned around and wanted to enter her own tent. Hui Yuhao only reacted at this moment. He rushed to stretch his hand out and grabbed her wrist. He anxiously said, "I'm sorry, I got the wrong person. It's perhaps because I miss her too much." Tang Wu twisted her head and coldly said, "Let go." At this instant, the expression in her eyes caused Hui Yuhao to be stunned once again. The cold look and tone in her voice were just like Wang Qiao when he saw her for the first time. Hui Yuhao was confused once again. Donga, Chioa. These two names kept on alternating in his mind. Everything was too difficult to understand right now. Her condition is obviously like Donga, but her actions and words remind me of both Donga and Chioa. Donga's beauty, kindness, vibrancy, and cuteness, but also Chioa's aloofness. When they combine, it seems like Tang Wu is a completely different person. Hui Yuhao subconsciously let go of her hand and was a little tormented as he lowered his head. He said, "I'm sorry, I recognized the wrong person. You look too alike to my lover. That's why." "It's okay, you don't have to explain anymore. I've heard such words many times before. There's still 2/3 of the incense stick left. If you've something to say, please hurry up. But I don't want to listen to what happened between you and your ex-girlfriends." "Ex-girlfriends? My only lover is Donga." Tang Wu was a little rushed as she interrupted him. "I already told you that I don't want to listen to any of that." "All right." Hui Yuhao couldn't adapt to her coldness and assertiveness. However, he soon got over it. "I'm not actually here to confide in you. I can settle my own problems. I don't need to burden anyone with my personal problems." Tang Wu was a little doubtful as she asked, "Then what are you finding me for?" Hui Yuhao was serious as he replied, "Wu, when I saw you for the first time, there's another reason why I mistook you for someone else. It was because I could sense that your soul power was very close to mine. It seems like it confused with mine. It confused with yours." Tang Wu retracted the cold look on her face and appeared a little pensive. "Are you saying that our martial souls confuse? How is that possible? The tier of your martial soul is so low. It can't be possible that we confuse." Hui Yuhao was a little speechless as he said, "I have twin martial souls. One of them is even of ultimate ice. How is it possible that it's too low?" Tang Wu lifted her head and flicked her hair before saying, "It's just low." Her pampered behavior made her seem more domineering, but in a good way. Hui Yuhao was a little helpless as he replied, "All right, it's low. However, I really feel that our martial souls confuse. Can we give it a try? If possible, we might be able to increase our fighting strength greatly in future missions. We are both soul sages. When two soul sages unleash a fusion skill, along with your strong martial soul, the effect will undoubtedly be very great." Tang Wu creased her eyebrows slightly and asked, "How do you want to try it, then?" Hui Yuhao answered, "Simple. I just need to place my palm on yours. After that, we'll just need to try connecting our soul power. If our martial souls can fuse, our soul power will fuse first." Tang Wu was a little doubtful as she looked at him and asked, "You're not doing this just to get close to me, right?" Hui Yuhao laughed bitterly. "Am I that stupid? There are plenty of reasons I could have used if that were the case. Why would I use the thing that's the most improbable? I really think that our martial souls can fuse. Let's try? If you're still doubtful, we can do it outside your tent. We don't have to enter your tent." Tang Wu hesitated for a moment when she saw the patrol guards that had just walked past before saying, "We can try, but we shall void the bet that I just made with you today. If you agree to this, I'll let you enter my tent and give it a go." Hui Yuhao didn't even hesitate, and nodded. "Okay, it's a deal." Hui Yuhao didn't claim anything after Xu Sancha beat Ji Juechen earlier, but Tang Wu remembered their bet. She didn't want to owe him anything, and thus she proposed this idea. When Hui Yuhao first suggested the bet, he was doing it for this. Using martial soul fusion to find out whether Tang Wu was Wang Dong was the most direct and reliable method. Perhaps he could even use martial soul fusion to tell if she was Wang Qiao. Of course, Hui Yuhao didn't believe that she was Wang Qiao. After all, Wang Qiao had already sacrificed herself, and her body had disappeared. His skull bone was even given to him by Wang Qiao. Tang Wu said, "All right, follow me in then." Remember, don't even think of trying anything funny. Otherwise, you'll regret it. As she spoke, she walked into her tent. Hu Yuhao quickly followed her. Right now, he was very tense. This was because this was very important to him. If Tang Wutong's martial soul couldn't fuse with his, it was likely that she wasn't Wang Dong'er. That was not something that Hu Yuhao hoped for either. After walking into the tent, Tang Wutong pointed to the ground and stated, "Let's do it on the ground." As she spoke, she retrieved a mat from her storage-type soul tool and placed it on the ground. She sat on it and pointed to the ground in front of her. Hu Yuhao nodded and sat down in front of her. Tang Wutong lifted her hands and said coldly, "Let's start." Hu Yuhao was evidently a little tense. However, if he didn't try, he wouldn't be relieved at all. It was important for him to find out who Tang Wutong was. He took a deep breath and circulated his soul power. Under the command of his spiritual power, it started surging in his body. Hu Yuhao lifted his hands and gently pressed them against Tang Wutong's palms. As their eyes met, it was obvious that the look in Tang Wutong's eyes was very cold, whereas Hu Yuhao looked very passionate. Dong'er, she must be Dong'er. As he thought, Hu Yuhao slowly summoned his mysterious heaven technique and poured it into Tang Wutong's body. Tang Wutong didn't resist, and allowed Hu Yuhao's soul power to enter her body. After that, she summoned her own soul power. Hu Yuhao's soul power was blocked by a passageway in her forearms. Of course she couldn't let Hu Yuhao's soul power circulate freely inside her, the equivalent of handing her life over to him. She only allowed him to test whether they could fuse in the passageways of her forearm. Hu Yuhao could clearly sense that Tang Wutong's soul power flowed in a structured manner, and there was even an aura of elegance about it. When their soul powers first came into contact with each other, Tang Wutong's soul power displayed strong discrimination towards Hu Yuhao's soul power. It was like it wanted to force his soul power out of her body. Hu Yuhao was stunned to find out that Tang Wutong was right. While his soul power wasn't any less powerful than hers, there was some kind of gap between them. This was a result of the difference between the blood lineages of their martial souls. How is this possible? I have twin martial souls, and I even possess ultimate ice. Moreover, I've fused with 4 spirits, which has significantly modified my martial soul. How is it possible that the tier of my martial soul is so much weaker than hers? Initially, his soul power would immediately fuse with Wang Dong'er's soul power when they first came into contact with one another, turning into Haodong power that would circulate through their bodies. This greatly increased their cultivation speed. To a large extent, the reason why Hu Yuhao's cultivation speed was able to rise so quickly was because of the Haodong power. However, the situation seemed to have completely changed now. The circulation of soul power in Tang Wutong's body was presented as an elegant, purplish gold color. During the process of circulation, her body exuded a dim, purplish gold glow. Hu Yuhao could even sense that the soul power circulating in her body was subtly rocking with the sound of a dragon roaring. Amid this rocking movement, Hu Yuhao's soul power was crushed before it could return to his body. Even though it would reform very quickly, it wasn't able to move an inch forward in Tang Wutong's body, much less complete any fusion. It was like they were supposed to be distinctly separated. As Tang Wutong's wrist trembled slightly, the soul power in her body started to circulate at a greater intensity. Hu Yuhao moved back 3 feet, as if he had been pushed. Tang Wutong's body slightly shone with a purplish gold glow, and an image of a golden trident flashed on her forehead before disappearing. She twisted her lips and said, "I've already told you that your martial soul can't fuse with me. Your instincts were wrong. If you really had some sort of sensation, I would experience the same sensation too. You can leave now." Hu Yuhao sat where he was in a daze. The expression on his face remained the same, and his entire body seemed to have turned into a statue. He was completely motionless. Tang Wutong furrowed her brow. "Hey! Why aren't you leaving yet?" Hu Yuhao slowly lowered his arms, and Tang Wutong could tell that his face had turned completely pale. It was as if he had lost his life energy. As he slowly stood up, Hu Yuhao walked towards the exit of the tent with a pale look on his face. When he drew open the curtains and walked out, he staggered and almost fell down. After this, his steps were very shaky as he walked away from the tent. He didn't even utter a word to Tang Wutong. Tang Wutong was stunned as she watched him leave. She was stunned to find out that she felt a little heartbroken for some unknown reason. Am I feeling heartbroken for him? How is this possible? Do I have to feel this way? Our martial souls are just incompatible, aren't they? Why does he look like he just lost his wife? What she didn't know was that Hui Yuhao didn't sense anything similar between her and Wang Donger's soul power, as their martial souls failed to fuse. To him, it was indeed as if he had lost his wife. Tang Wutong isn't Donger, Tang Wutong isn't Donger, Tang Wutong isn't Donger. This thought repeated itself in Hui Yuhao's head. He seemed as if he had lost his soul. He was completely in a trance right now. He didn't even know how he made his way back to his tent. After he returned, he laid down on his own bed and didn't move at all. It was as if he already lost his soul. As he lay on his bed, Hui Yuhao didn't know when he started to fall asleep. However, he felt as if his life energy had been completely drained as he fell asleep. After Hui Yuhao left, Tang Wutong also stood up and put her mat away. She muttered to herself, "This fellow is ridiculous. The possibility of fusion between two soul masters is naturally close to zero. What's there to be so depressed about?" However, he really looks to have been in poor shape earlier. After sitting down on her bed, Tang Wutong started to meditate and began her cultivation for the night. Second day, morning. Tang Wutong stretched her back and body before she jumped out of bed. After a night of meditation, her fatigue had completely disappeared. As she stretched her body, she couldn't help but let out a groan. After she reached the exit of her tent, she drew the curtains aside and allowed fresh air to flow into her tent. That fellow didn't sleep the entire night? Tang Wutong subconsciously turned her attention towards the tent beside hers just as she walked out of her tent. She couldn't help but think of Hui Yuhao's pale face when he left the previous night. Just at this moment, the curtains of the tent beside hers were also drawn open. Tang Wutong quickly turned her gaze away. Hui Yuhao also exited his own tent. As he stood in front of his tent, he also stretched out. Tang Wutong glanced at him out of the corner of her eye. When she saw him, he seemed to have returned to normal. The expression on his face was very calm. Hui Yuhao turned his gaze towards Tang Wutong and nodded at her before saying, "Good morning." "Good morning." Tang Wutong acknowledged automatically. Hui Yuhao smiled courteously before walking towards the canteen that Dai Yueheng had pointed out to them the day before. They were allocated the canteen that served high-ranking military officers. Soul masters were different from ordinary people. Their food requirements were much more demanding. In order to ensure that their soul masters possessed sufficient fighting strength, the Star Luo Empire naturally provided them with the best food possible. Tang Wutong felt as if Hui Yuhao had changed when she saw him walking past her. However, he's still wearing a smile like he normally does. But why do I feel as if he's different? Alienation? Yes, it's alienation. He's no longer as friendly as before. The look in his eyes isn't as gentle as before. As she recalled the first time she met him, she could still remember that he would look at her whenever she was around. However, this wasn't the case earlier. Even though he had looked at her earlier, he had quickly retracted his gaze. After greeting her, he quietly left. The look in his eyes was very calm, but this calm look left Tang Wutong feeling a little uncomfortable. I've not done anything wrong. This fellow, HMPH. Hui Yuhao finished washing up and quietly went to the canteen. Their breakfast was very scrumptious. He sat in one corner alone and ate. However, he started feeling emotional. Only one sentence had repeated itself in his mind the entire night: "She isn't Donger. Donger, where's my Donger?" Tang Wutong and Donger's soul powers were very different. His heart felt very cold. He felt as if he had lost everything he had. As the saying goes, the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. If Tang Wutong isn't Donger, where is Donger? Initially, Tang Wutong's appearance had made him feel very optimistic and confident in this mission. However, after last night's incident, sorrow and yearning filled his heart once again. In addition, it became even more intense. Tang Wutong was also in the canteen. She entered not long after Hui Yuhao did, and intentionally sat far away from him to eat her own breakfast. However, she couldn't help but glance at him. She wanted to see if he was acting, and whether he would look at her. However, she was disappointed. What she saw was a Hui Yuhao who ate his breakfast silently, and had a hollow look in his eyes. After eating his breakfast, Hui Yuhao left and returned to his tent. Tang Wutong pushed her cutlery away in front of her and creased her brow. What's wrong with him? Does he have to be so affected just because our martial souls can't fuse? If that were the case, why would Shrek Academy look upon him so highly? Is he mentally ill? No, I have to ask him what's going on. Just as she couldn't figure things out, Jiang Nan Nan and Shu Sancha came in. Hey, Wutong. We just saw Yu Hao leave. Why didn't you leave with him? Shu Sancha said naturally. Tang Wutong snorted and replied, why would I do so? Shu Sancha chortled, are you throwing a tantrum again? Tang Wutong suddenly thought of something and asked Shu Sancha, let me ask you a question. Shu Sancha, curious, asked, me? What do you want to know? Jiang Nan also stopped because she was curious. She turned her attention towards Tang Wutong. Tang Wutong said, if a person thinks that his martial soul can fuse with another soul master's, but fails after trying, will he be greatly affected? Shu Sancha answered without any hesitation. Of course not. That's very normal. Martial soul fusion isn't that easy. Jiang Nan also nodded. Tang Wutong was indignant as she replied, yes. That's what I thought. However, somebody doesn't think this way. He acted as if he had just lost his wife. Shu Sancha and Jiang Nan looked at each other and felt that something was amiss. Jiang Nan probed, Wutong, surely you aren't talking about Yu Hao, right? Tang Wutong snorted, who else? Last night, he came to find me and said that he thinks that our martial souls might possibly fuse. He insisted on trying. I claimed that it wasn't possible, but he didn't believe me. In the end, we failed even after trying. He seemed to have lost his soul as he left. This morning, he ignored me and seems to be a new person. Tell me, is there even anyone like him? All of you still praise him to the high heavens. A soul master who can't even control himself, how good can he be? This video will end here.